Peace, family. It's your brother B Knowledge of Law, and we're back with the B Knowledge Academy. And I have another political education piece for you today. Now we're gonna still dig into that new African state building, right? And I'm gonna zone in on one of the processes of new African state building. Now, before I get into it, a couple things I gotta make clear: assimilation versus separation. Now, separation is new African state building, meaning so-called Black folks, African Americans, right? The new Africans, right here in the wilderness of North America, those that come from the blood of the West African, the North African, the East and Southern African, those that come from the blood of the indigenous peoples here, right? Those that come from and have been sprinkled with the blood, right, of the oppressive forces here in the wilderness of North America, right, through the love and through the war, right, and oppression that our people have suffered here for a long time in the wilderness of North America. So the new African, right, so-called Black folks who you know of, the brother you're looking at today, right, those you see in the so-called hoods and ghettos, right, are people that you know of as so-called what, HBCUs and things of that nature. You get the point. And the northern new African in particular, because we share this blood and experiences with those either farther north in Canada and those in the islands, right? Caribbean, so-called, and the things of these natures. So for the northern New African, the Black man here in the wilderness of North America, I'm gonna get into some land acquisition methods because we always talk about assimilation, right? Versus separation. And like I said, New African state building, that's separation, state building, not just nationalism where you could wear what you want, say what you want, call yourself whatever you want to call yourself, name your babies, whatever, homeschool them, send them to African school, whatever the hell. You know what I'm saying? We understand being a nation within a nation, that some people are satisfied with that extent of their own political consciousness and awareness and that extent of their own recognition for the United States as well as all the human families of the planet Earth, right? We get a lot of assimilation ideas, right? So we have to put out this education so that we can raise our consciousness to a degree where we know better. So we do better and we understand that land equals independence. So the how to, we're going to get into more with land acquisition methods and declaring yourself independent, right? However, the assimilation processes, even though we know and understand surviving and currency in today's day and time, right? And how to acquire certain assets that can be beneficial to our cause and our freedom, justice, and equality. However, don't stop at surviving. You get money, use that money properly, right? You have education, use that education properly. Don't stop at assimilation, meaning, oh, I want to be a free Black person. I want to be an equal human being. So I'm going to get my child some stocks. And in 20 years, that stock is making him a millionaire. Assimilation. When your idea is dependent upon the United States of America, when your ideas are dependent upon your direct oppressor and open enemies being fruitful and multiplying economically, spiritually, physically, when your future and your destiny, right, is dependent upon the current state of real estate in this country, taking out a loan, paying that off, and your future is dependent upon your consciousness being in a state in where you think that the institutions of this country, right, when you think that the assimilation forces, right, Fair Housing Act, civil rights, Brown versus Board of Ed, when you think, oh, I'm gonna send them to the best school possible, which if you're from the hood, you know that means you move to a white school. I moved them to a better school. I moved them to a white school. The assimilated processes that have been embedded into our brains and ingrained, right, into our magnetic have to end. So how? even though this has been spoken of for a long time. As they say, the Black Liberation Army, existed since we hopped off them boats. So to truly liberate ourselves, right? Like the maroon societies of the past, right? Some of them brothers and sisters hopped right off boats and got right to land acquisition and consequently state building. All over the wilderness in North America, the untold tales of the maroon societies, the Florida, the Seminoles, which is our people, an amalgamation, right, of other natives of this land. The land acquisition processes, right, and which I'll get into, gangs at Tempe State Building, taking the block, right, from oppressive forces. The land acquisition methods that have been hidden that our people have always had. Special Field Order 15, I always tell people. The coast of South Carolina, Georgia, the tips of Florida and tips of North Carolina, and 30 miles inward was given to our people post-Civil War by Sherman and Lincoln. And when he was assassinated, the next president came in there, right? And in the process of the Indian land removal and all these things, in the process before and after Lincoln, right? Because this was a continuation of what they've been doing, of not just the Indian removal and the land removal, but the Trail of Tears and things of this nature. It's deeper than you think. So we've always had goals of land acquisition. It's just there's always been a COINTELPRO, just like there's always been a Black Liberation Army. So these oppressive forces, what they do is they up, right, the propaganda on the assimilative task, right? Oh, this rapper and this ball player are investing in rent-to-own properties. So Black people in 20 years, you could own a home if you join this rent-to-own property, because you'll just rent for 20 years and then you'll own it and have something to pass on to your children. I understand survival. You want to play the game, mortgage lower than the rent, interest rates. I could do X, Y, and Z. Listen, we ain't dumb over here. I understand survival. But take that and take that same assimilative process, just like the criminal mentality, and transform it into a revolutionary one again. Take that same assimilative consciousness, just like the criminal one, and transform it into a revolutionary one. Now I'm gonna get into it. Like I said, land acquisition methods, because in a new African state, and there's different qualifications of state, but when I say a nation state, I'm not talking New Jersey, I'm not talking Washington. We don't wish to have a state that is a part of, right, the union known as the United States of America. Black people here in the wilderness, North America, deserve a revolutionary nationalism. They deserve a state of their own, not just as all the human families of the planet Earth do, but due to what I'm gonna tell you now. Right. So we understand assimilation. We understand ingraining yourself further in the society in hopes for an equal and better place. We understand what we've been doing for hundreds of years, right? And most recently, like I said, civil rights, right? Same school system, same hospitals, same businesses, same banking, and assimilating further into the United States. All it's done is solidify our place at the bottom of the totem pole as the new African people, as so-called Black folks. All you gotta do is listen to Dr. Claude Anderson and talking about Native Black Americans, right? Being the only non-immigrant people here, and him explaining how being 13% of the country's population, between 13 and 15% now, we own less than 1/2 of 1%. Again, being 13% of the country's population, we own less than 1/2 of 1% of property and ownership period in this country. And it's totality, it's talking holistically. So that's from assimilative processes. And when we do that, especially now, all the foreign groups coming in, whether it's from South America or from Africa or from what they call the Middle East, India, and all that, coming in mass over here to reap the benefits of our labor. What we've done is further assimilate, right, by now taking their pattern and say, oh, let's build neighborhoods like them. Why can't we have a poppy store? Why can't we have a laundromat? Why can't we buy an apartment complex? Again, I understand surviving. However, change that assimilative process into a revolutionary process. Now let's go. I'm gonna share my screen. You say, B, now as opposed to simulation, what are we supposed to do? Right? As opposed to assimilation, what do you have us do? What is separation? How do we, right? How do we get land? You say land is the basis of independence. How do we get land? Well, there's several land acquisition methods as of recent. Your big brother, United States of America, have used to acquire what they have now, have to acquire manifest destiny from the 13 colonies we gave them. From the 13 colonies our people in West Africa recognize them for. Right? But it starts with declaring yourself independent, which is raising your consciousness from a level of I'm a US citizen, right? I'm an African American, second class, low class, 13th Amendment, 3/4 of you get it. Change your consciousness from I'm gonna let you decide my destiny into new African state building. Change your consciousness from, oh, how much money y'all want from reparations? Change your consciousness from, oh, you be a little more active in the community, we'll treat your children better in school. And then maybe they could go to one of our good white schools. And they ain't gonna use that towards new African state building. What they gonna do is come back and encourage people to assimilate by becoming a mayor in their hometown. What they're gonna do is encourage people to assimilate by becoming Black millionaires, Black entrepreneurs, Black Wall Street. Assimilation. If your goal is to spend the next 30 years of your life creating a Black Wall Street, that's assimilation. When we should bring destructive to the oppressive forces, which include the economic strategies that they push worldwide, the capitalism, right, that they push worldwide. Talking about the states that currently run the world. We ain't gonna get spooky or crazy with it. With the theys, the states that run the world push a capitalist agenda, right, which further goes into an imperialist agenda. And what I mean by that is what these people do, right, is they take a system in which your labor is utilized. They take a system in which your brains, right, and your children, right, and your education is utilized for the benefit of a very small group of people. They take a system in which the average man and woman is living like crabs in a barrel. Why? Because there's a control mechanism put in place to that it's individualistic. Individualistic meaning my goal is to make as much money so I could be over as much money people as possible. My goal is to get as much land so I could rule as much people as possible, as opposed to the communalism African people have always had. Now, don't get it fucked up. Humans, period, go in and out of development stages and go in and out of greed and what? Freedom, justice, and equality. However, I'm talking in relevance to our situation here and why we're in an oppressed state. Because this capitalist structure, right? What it teaches people is to monopolize off of particular ideas, monopolize off of particular industries, to monopolize off of particular people and classes. As weird as it sounds, that's the reality of it. And what happens is now you're in a position where you have to act selfish and individualistic to be somebody, to be rich, right? And what this leads to, right, when a small group of people end up controlling a very large group of people through their capitalistic endeavors, right, through their monopoly on the people's resources, right, the imperialistic state comes, in which now you not only have a small state that monopolizes off the world resources, right? You not only now have a state that doesn't only control their territory, but extends their rule over other people's territory and resources. What you have now is an America that rules over the people of the Pacific Islands, the Hawaiians. What we know today is, we have a people who has a nation within a nation, the New Africans, the so-called Black people. We have a state that controls Puerto Rico. We have a state that just let go of the Philippines. We have a state that controls the indigenous people up in Alaska. Right? We have a state that is right now in Iran, in Syria, in Iraq, Afghanistan. We have a state that has a military base on most known countries in the world. So the capitalistic idea of a small group of people ruling the resources and the ideas and the consciousness of a very large group of people, 10% controlling 85% of people, what you get is these 10% people, right, evolve or devolve, however you may see it, into a consciousness in which now they actually rule these people, not just their resources, but they actually come into a state of controlling their entire destiny because they've assimilated them and they've made them a part of them. So like I said, you have Hawaii, Puerto Rico, you have my people, you had the Alaskans, you just had the Philippines, and you have all these neo-colonies like it's being fought against in Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, right? These neo-colonies that once were proud revolutionary places a lot in Africa that have turned into neo-colonies, letting the US and Britain and London and France come in. Now, I know I'm going on, but I had to drive my point about how these people have become imperialistic and driving that point to, and these people become imperialistic over you. Now it's not just your thing because you live on the planet and you have responsibility to the world over. However, because it directly affects you, right? And the growth of your consciousness and your people. So how do you get out of an imperialistic state? How do you elevate yourself out of a capitalistic structure? Well, for our people here, the new African state building is the first method. And the first method to a state building is declaring yourself independent of the oppressive forces over you. So I'll start with that, a Declaration of Independence. Because Malcolm, Al-Hajj Malik Al-Baz, who showed us that land is independence and independence is land, and who was willing to go internationally, he told us, right, about the Algerians, right, and how France wanted them to assimilate. And he said, you could just be France. You could be French. And he said, what? They don't want no France. They want some land. So that's what we want. We don't want no United States. We want some land. And not just 40 acres and a mule to try and bridge the gap economically or as far as ownership is concerned. We want that land to be towards our own destiny in our own state where we can decide and follow and trust our own collective leadership. So the land acquisition method, it starts with a Declaration of Independence. And that Declaration of Independence, right, very relevant and has been done many times over. But in this new African state building, new African Declaration of Independence, we go to the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa. And in new African state building and state building period, and you politically educate yourself and raise your conscience, you understand the science of a provisional government. You understand the science of parties, right, and organizations that have passed, that have come and fought for this work, right? So going to Malcolm, right? It was those Malcolmites, right? It was those that helped him and taught him. It was those that learned from him, right, and helped him. That decided to continue the legacy and say, you know what? This state building thing Malcolm talked about, this internationalization that Malcolm talked about is very, very relevant. So what we gonna do, we're not gonna stop it at a state here or somewhere else. We're not gonna stop it at reparations to be able to do for our people for a certain amount of years. What we gonna do is the bold piece. We gonna carve out a piece of this land here in the wilderness, North America, and we're gonna, being the highly advanced and educated people we are, in carving out this land, what we're gonna do is we're gonna declare ourselves independent, and we're gonna migrate to the land. And those of us that aren't there are gonna gear their life, right, and their resources, right, and their education, right, and their recruitment towards freeing this land, right? So what they did was call together, right, in this convention, in this conference. What they did was call together the Black leaders, like this picture you see here, some of these people, and then some of these founders, and they called together our masses, right, in Detroit in 1968 March. And what they drafted was the Declaration of Independence, right, and a provisional government, right? Another historical piece, right? Another thing when studying the contradictions of society and understanding the solutions to them and how we evolve and advance out of that. This is one of the educated solutions for our people, right? A government ran by our people for our people. Now, not just government, but provisional government, because in dealing with reality, knowing your time and space and knowing exactly where you're at in your development. So a temporary government, a government in place of a government, right, set to provide the provisions mentally, spiritually, physically for us to advance to the state of political, economic independence, political, military independence. A provisional government to be put in place, right, to help our people elevate and organize to a state where we can have new African state, right? A provisional government to lead our people, right? A provisional government to help our people, even in both idealism and materialism, to advance ourselves into a state of new African state building. And that starts with land acquisition, right? And that land acquisition to all the human families, as well as to your oppressor, especially in our condition, you have to declare yourself independent. So, right, the provisional government and the government of the independent new African state, once established, shall pursue without cease the aims of revolution set out in the Declaration of Independence in these words. So, the new African Declaration of Independence, right? And you'll get more of a background on that. You go to pg-rna.com. You can research the provisional government. There's plenty of resources out there, right? And you can understand more the depth of this Declaration of Independence. But to keep it simple, in this method on this video on land acquisition, and you understand the start to land acquisition historically, particularly in near history with the United States of America, you know, and understand that in this new African Declaration of Independence, drafted by those Malcolmites that came together with the rest of our people that were concerned for revolution, with the rest of our people that were concerned for evolution, right? Not only those over, but under, right? As far as, or respectfully over or under Malcolm X, right? And around his ideas, and those from the various organizations, known and unknown, right? The people known and unknown, and all these revolutionary formations, whether you're talking about Black Panthers, or what we know as generally the public, Black Panthers, Black Liberation Army, SNCC, what we know generally in the public, those that are either associated with, directly influenced by, directly a part of any of these organizations, RAM, you understand, Nation of Islam, so on and so on. So the new African Declaration of Independence, we, the Black people in America, in consequence of arriving at a knowledge of ourselves as a people with dignity, long deprived of that knowledge, as a consequence of revolting with every decimal of our collective and individual beings against the oppression that the 300 years has destroyed, that for 300 years has destroyed and broken and warped the bodies and minds and spirits of our people in America. In consequence of our raging desire to be free of this oppression, to destroy this oppression wherever it assaults mankind in the world, and in consequence of our inextinguishable determination to go a different way, to build a new and better world, do hereby declare ourselves forever free and independent of the jurisdiction of the United States of America and the obligations with that which that country's unilateral, one-sided, right? Unilateral decision to make our ancestors and ourselves paper citizens placed upon us. We claim no rights from the United States of America other than those rights belong to human beings anywhere in the world. And these include the right to damages, reparations due us for the grievous injuries sustained by our ancestors and by ourselves by reason of United States lawlessness. Ours is a revolution against oppression, our oppression and that of all people in the world. And it is a revolution for a better life, a better station for mankind, a surer harmony with the forces of life in the universe. We therefore see these as the aims of our revolution. Now, again, I'm bringing this to you because you have to understand in new African state building and the land acquisition methods, part of that land acquisition method, like I said before, is to declare yourself free. And in declaring yourself free, right? What you're able to do now is understand that you had the awareness and consciousness for yourself and for your children, a set goal and standard on the land. So in our land acquisition, right, ours is a revolution against, in our new African state building, nation state building, right? Our Ghana, our Israel, our Kenya, our United States of America, just so you understand, and put it in that context of what we mean by nation state. Ours is a revolution against oppression, our oppression and that of all people in the world. And it is a revolution for a better life, a better station for mankind, a surer harmony with the forces of life in the universe. We therefore see these as the aims of our revolution: to free Black people in America from oppression, to support and wage the world revolution until all people everywhere are so free, to build a new society that is better than what we now know and is as perfect as man can make it, to assure all people in the new society maximum opportunity and equal access to that maximum, to promote industriousness, responsibility, scholarship, and service, to create conditions in which freedom of religion abounds and man's pursuit of God and the destiny, place, and purpose of man in the universe will be without hindrance, to build a Black independent nation where no sect or religious creed subverts or impedes the building of the new society. Like I said before, or like I've said many times, a lot of times it's not just the idealism of economics, right? Capitalism and the political economic means, right, that are overt. We forget the covert, right? Or the things that trick our people, right? The religious creeds and sects, right, that impede the building of a new society. Because what it does is teach you to believe there's a power outside of yourself, that this small group of people, right, this capitalistic structure, this minority that controls the majority, teaches the minority to search outside themselves for new African state building. When in actually, what we need is to build an independent, Black independent nation where no sect or religious creed subverts or impedes the building of a new society, the new state government, or the achievement of the aims of the revolution as set forth in this declaration, to end exploitation of man by man or his environment, to assure equality of rights for the sexes, to end color and class discrimination while not abolishing salubrious diversity, and to promote self-respect and mutual respect among all people in the society, to protect and promote the personal dignity and integrity of the individual and his natural rights, to assure justice for all, to place the major means of production and trade in the trust of the state, and to assure the benefits of this earth and man's genius and labor to society and all its members, and to encourage and reward the individual for hard work and initiative and insight and devotion to the revolution. And mutual trust and great expectation, we, the undersigned, for ourselves and for those who look to us but are unable to personally fix their signatures here too, do sign in a solemn declaration of independence and to support this declaration and to assure the success of our revolution, we pledge without reservation, ourselves, talents, and all our worldly goods. And now, just to let you know, bring back up this book, Foundations of the Black Nation, right? A textbook on the ideas behind the new Black nationalism and the struggle for the land in America. So we talking from about land acquisition. I'm gonna come to one of the founders of the Republic of New Africa, right, of the provisional government. His brother, Dr. Mario Bedelli, probably held most, if not all, positions in the cabinets of the Republic of New Africa, one of the longest standing presidents, and you know, those that planted seeds of thought and political revolution and advancing our thought and nationalism. So one thing he pointed out in this book was the section I'm gonna focus on for land acquisition is that U.S. acquisition of land in the past, the U.S. right acquired possessive sovereignty over land by 5 methods. Okay, so one is acquisition by treaty, right? You have acquisition by purchase, you have acquisition by conquest, acquisition by mutual consent, and acquisition by seizure. So the first method, right? And again, we're reading from Foundations of the Black Nation, acquisition by treaty, right? He goes in to build on how the Indians yielded much of their land as a result of treaties, right? Usually a pecuniary payment was involved, although the Indians did not always view the transfer as a change of sovereignty or a permanent sale, and even though many of the treaties are of questionable validity. Sometimes the treaty followed warfare. Sometimes it followed settler occupation of land, but there are over 300 such treaties with the Indians upon which United States possessive sovereignty rests. Most of Georgia and Alabama are acquired by 14 such major treaty actions with the Creek Nation and the Cherokee Nation between 1802 and 1835. Most of Mississippi, the northern part, was acquired from the Choctaw and Chickasaw in 6 such major treaty actions between 1801 and 1832. Now we don't understand this is one acquisition. So when it comes to, hey, how do we get this land? Everyone think, oh, we understand people's war, and we know and understand the nature of man is to take land, and there ain't no bloodless revolution. However, when it comes to the extensive territory of New Africa, right? When it comes to the land acquisition methods and the gearing ourselves towards the goal of freeing Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, right? And anywhere else that Black people are so oppressed here in wilderness, North America, and abroad. Again, Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina, right? The Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and South Carolina, and anywhere else where Black people are oppressed and all people are oppressed in the universe, I'll say. We need to know and understand that certain land acquisition methods are by treaty. It's not all about bloody war. We understand there's blood and revolution. However, whole or part of that land or land elsewhere for New Africa, right? To extend the territory that we're claiming rightfully by treaty. Again, you see the movies, these white boys claim land all day and they so damn heroic. They go back to their homeland and take it from another white person because they father's father inherited through this bloodline and, or this war that happened 100 years ago created these boundaries between the people. And listen, white people be so heroic to y'all, especially Black folks. Y'all love Superman fighting for this planet against evil. You know what I'm saying? Y'all love U.S. military movies and how they fought so valiantly in Korea and Vietnam and so on, and other people's land acquisition methods. But y'all don't pay attention to foolery they did right here, right? So acquisition by treaty. We know and understand a lot of the original people if you know and understand the Iroquois Confederation. So right here, talking about Choctaw, Chickasaw, right, Cherokee, and Creek, and so on. We'll understand Washita, Wichita, and so on. You'll know and understand that that's in our blood as New Africans. So acquisition by treaty, a lot of this, right? A lot of this land was yielded by treaty. And the treaties, followed by warfare a lot of times, because a lot of shit was the same way they do today. You can't do contracts with, this government. We don't understand they get people with fine print and all this stuff all today. So that's just acquisition by treaty, just to open your mind to it's not just all about, oh, we just go to raid some land and take it how they tell you do. No, there's acquisition by treaty. And even though they enforced oppression, and even though the United States government tricked, right, and swindled people out of their land, there's acquisition by treaty. So you have acquisition by purchase, which I don't want you to fuck up with assimilation. I'm in real estate, and we don't understand, right, the different methods of real estate and property. So when it talks about acquisition by purchase, I'm not saying buy your 40 acres and you free. I'm not even saying buy you a town, which real estate developers are talking about today, and incorporate it into America and you're free. Buy you 100 million acres somewhere in Texas somewhere, right? And now you're free, and you're going to use certain means of the U.S. law to try and enforce your dignity as a so-called black man. When we're talking new Afrikan state building, right? When we're talking about the past land acquisition methods of the United States of America, right? Acquisition by purchase. Again, reading from the book. Most of Louisiana and the land between Mississippi River and the Rockies, from the Gulf of Mexico to Canada, was acquired by the United States by a $12 million purchase from France and treaty in 1803. Florida was purchased from Spain in 1819 for $5 million in treaty. The Gila River in southern Arizona was purchased from Mexico for $10 million. The Gadsden purchase in 1853. Alaska was purchased from Russia by the United States in 1867 for $7 million. And treaty, although the title vis-a-vis the original inhabitants seems not to have been cleared until December 1917. American Samoa was acquired in 1899 by the combination of Cold War, solemnized by treaty. The Virgin Islands were purchased in 1971 from Denmark for $25 million. So you see all these land purchases from different countries. So when the United States of America, or when you black people, when you act like, how dare you talk about you go have states from the United States and turn it into what? Independent New Africa. When you look at it, it's like it's impossible. And we even get to really fighting. We talk a treaty and purchase right now. Y'all just think the colored man, a white man, and his government is so much over you, right? You think that the oppressive forces of the world are so much over you that the only way to get anything is how he did it, the majority through bloodshed and trickery. And you think that that's what you got to do. And because you believe in his technology and weapons so much and his political military power, you think that there's no way, right, to get up from under him because he's just the superior on the planet. So you just stop at assimilation, right? You don't realize his Cold War efforts. You're not thinking about his acquisition of land by treaty. Saying this to say it's possible for you. You're not thinking about his acquisition by purchase. It's possible for you not to just buy your land and build a house there. I'm talking about purchase for a nation state. Think about that. Purchase of a nation state or part of it. Is as poor as they call Mississippi, right? When you have a provisional government in place, right? The parties that we've had and the armies we've had, right, that have been in place, and some still are in place, whether above ground or clandestine. We have the organizational means, right, to through acquisition by purchase, conduct ourselves in a proper manner, right, after that land acquisition into a state building. So acquisition by purchase, like you said, American Samoa was acquired in 1899 by a combination of Cold War, solemnized by treaty. So of course they throw their thing in, but then again, the Virgin Islands purchased in 1971 from Denmark for 25 million. Talking our parents' generation. My mom a little younger than that, however, you understand. Acquisition by purchase has been a common thread of the United States of America. So in advancing your political thought, you should understand putting into your strategic elements, acquisition by treaty, acquisition by purchase, and then you have by conquest, which you're familiar with. The United States acquired Arizona, Western Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, and California through American War against Mexico from 1846 to 1848. Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines were acquired through American War against Spain in 1889. The peace treaty provided for a U.S. payment to Spain of $25 million. So you have conquest where they was just straight going what we mimic on the block, taking the block. Like I said in another video, you need to transform that criminal mentality into a revolutionary one. We got no problem with spinning the block. We got no problem with fuck this street, and we have this street before it and the street after it. We have no problem decades now holding that down. However, we fear or don't have confidence in a people's war that may take decades, just like peoples and folks and Bloods and Crips and so on been going decades. We have no confidence in a people's war against actual oppression and not bullshit, right? Arizona, Western Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, Nevada, California. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 states. And as big as California is, right? Come on. Plus Puerto Rico, Guam, the Philippines, right? Come on now. This is by conquest alone. So the method that you think we talk about for the most part in land acquisition, right? The people's war that involves treaty, that involves purchase, right? That involves unification, right? That involves standing in solidarity with nations all over the planet so that it won't get to what you picture in your head, right, as a total genocide of our people through some imaginary movie war, alien shit y'all looking up. So acquisition by conquest, right? We need to know and understand what's in your future, and we need to know and understand what happened to you. So when you compare the contradictions that came out of this, when you study the solutions that came out of the contradictions of different land acquisition methods, you know the best way to move forward. You have acquisition by mutual consent, which is a lot of the assimilation in America. And as deep as our people are in their pockets, right? Mutual consent is what a lot of times a lot of people think will happen. The United States acquired a portion of West Florida in 1810 from Spain as a result of the people there declaring themselves U.S. citizens and the U.S. presidents proclaiming acceptance of this self-determination. This area became part of Louisiana. In 1837, the founders of the Republic of Texas, immediately after establishing their independent constitution, called for a U.S. annexation, which was agreed to by the U.S. in a joint resolution of Congress, not a ratification by the Senate, in 1845. So, land acquisition methods, it's not far-fetched, because this is right in near history of the U.S. Our direct oppressors is the people who you think up under them, right, or getting up under from them is so impossible, who you think, right, in your land acquisition, in your new Afrikan state building, you see it so far-fetched that you can't even look right in their near history. They were split up and decided to come together. So like Dr. Mario Bedelli says, we had the right to a new African state or states, a nation state or nation states. And when it comes down to it, in our own room and meetings, we'll go over the annexation, right, and the unification. And I'm gonna go in on a video about the balkanization of America, but that's a whole different thing. So by mutual consent, right? West Florida was acquired in 1810 from Spain, as a result of people declaring themselves U.S. citizens. So when we talk about as a provisional government, going back to the role of provisional government and winning the consent of the people to govern, talking about the Kush district, right? Talking about the tip of what? If you look right above Mississippi, you'll see what's the Memphis, Tennessee, right? And all that. And from the tip of Memphis down along that river that divides Louisiana and Mississippi, right? All the way down to the tip of the borders of those states. That Kush district surrounding Jackson, Mississippi, and things of that nature. And when Dr. Mario Bedelli talks about starting here, where even till today, like I showed in another video, that's still today the most condensed Black population, right? Starting in places like that, starting in places like the major cities, starting in places down south where we hold continuous population, right, majority for counties and for different and throughout lands, as opposed to where everywhere else we're pretty much outpopulated. What we need to know and understand is a people can declare themselves new African citizens and consequently have the U.S. by mutual consent, right? Acquire a portion of Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina. Acquisition by seizure, right? In 1812, the United States annexed West Florida belonging to Spain between the Pearl and Perdido rivers by a simple act of Congress, and thus provided Mississippi with its Gulf Coast shoreline. Before we talk about Louisiana, they taking more, right? In 1898, the United States, by a joint resolution of Congress, now the Senate ratification, annexed the 4-year-old Hawaiian Republic. So a lot of times, like with conquest, they was fighting, they went in there and took it. But sometimes you have the straight seizure where they just, oh, this is ours. There wasn't even a fight, really. There wasn't even a big war over it. They just had enough in their strategy. There was enough capitalism. There was enough political military strength through their capitalistic ventures to be able to seize property, right? There's a difference by conquest, right? If your goal, right, is to go to this so-called new land to you, right, and do different methods, fight for it and war for it, right? If they came into our communities, we had a state of our own, and someone tries to conquer us by war. And the difference between that and just seizing it. So in 1812, there was different parts of West Florida, right? That the government decided, the United States government decided, we just go seize this. It's ours now. So that was simple, y'all. I just want to get into this new African state building land acquisition methods to get y'all to understand that we can do this. And it's not what you think. You know, you have what? Treaty, purchase, conquest, mutual consent, seizure. That's just in the recent history how the United States of America did it. What I encourage us to do is have new creative ways for land acquisition, new creative ways, new African ways, right? To develop a state for ourselves. And it starts with declaring yourself independent. And you declare yourself independent, right? Not just by a conscious choice in yourself, right? Not just by saying it out loud, but through action. So those of us that have the means or will to educate the masses politically so that we can advance our consciousness into new African state building. Not just assimilation, where we can do better in this system, and that's what we'll fight for. Not just reformation, where we can reform not just the prison institution, but the educational institution, economic institution, loans, banking, etc. So we could be on some type of equal footing with other human families that are considered American citizens, right? But declare yourself independent in order to be control your political destiny. Declare yourself independent, not just of the mental shackles of this United States of America and the other oppressive states and mindsets that rule this world, but to declare yourself independent, right, over a piece of land, which is your natural human right. It's your right to take yourself from the oppressive powers, right, in consequence that arriving at the knowledge of ourselves as a people with dignity. And that's what we on, raising our conscience from assimilation to new African state builder.